through these some of these. So White Lily says, how did Jewish leaders convince so many Jews to not believe in a plurality of persons? I find it fascinating how beliefs of God changed after Jesus. So based on what I've heard from you, Anthony, and what I've seen in some quotations here and there and so on, and you've already talked about this. So early on, it was fairly common to have a Jewish belief. So at the time of Jesus, it's fairly common to believe in multiple, what do you want to call them, persons or whatever, or powers or whatever, in heaven. And that once Christianity begins to spread, Jewish leaders want to set themselves apart from Christianity by emphasizing a Unitarian position. And it seems like Lily here is just asking how they pull that one off.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, it wasn't wholesale. They weren't wholesale successful, and that's something I pointed out earlier. That's what you're referring back to. So what happens is, even when I say that this was a belief among Second Temple Jews, it doesn't mean that every Jew understood this, but it's very popular. So one of the sources for our knowledge of Jews who believed in a plurality of persons are the Targums, which represent popular Judaism. The Targums developed in the synagogues. So it's not just Sadducees or temple Jews who are believing this sort of thing, those that are attached to the officiating of the official temple cult in Jerusalem. Throughout the lands of Jews in Israel and in Babylon, this was a common feature of their belief system, but not every Jew would have believed that. After the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem and Israel being plowed up like a field, the rabbis began to try and codify the religion, and it takes place over several centuries where they're preserving certain traditions, excising others. And so in that context, people are being influenced by this leadership that's sort of imposing this on them. But even then, there were Jews, as I mentioned, that continued outside of the Talmudic channels that continued to perpetuate these ideas. So I pointed out that Moshe Idel, in his book Ben, shows that this was the sort of thing that you can find in medieval works where they still believed this. Nachmanides, who's a famous medieval rabbi, still believed this sort of thing. You have other Jewish scholars. Daniel Abrams points this out. Andrei Olav points this out. It's very well known that Jews continued to believe this, and it's sort of a well-kept secret. I can't believe that people like Tovia Singer, for example, don't know about it. They just won't admit it, and they're hoping that Christians like myself won't bring it up.
And it reminds me of a sort of similar issue in Islam, where I think people underestimate how much leaders and worship leaders and scholars and so on, how much control they can exercise over a population in terms of what to believe. But it's very similar in that we read the Quran and we're like, guys, the Quran all over the place is affirming the inspiration and the preservation and the authority of Jewish and Christian scriptures. And yet you go to almost any Muslim in the world will say, yeah, your book's been corrupted according to the Quran. We're like, what are you even talking about? Where did they get this? They didn't get this by reading the Quran. They got it by listening to their leaders. Whereas their leaders, they know about all these passages affirming the Bible, but they know they kind of can't let the cat out of the bag, or it's going to lead to all sorts of problems for them. And so they just have to kind of, no, not what it says. And so it seems like a similar situation that you're talking about the Old Testament, which Jews believe in, and you're pointing out, hey, if you actually have a Unitarian position, what about this? What about this? What about this, and this? So yeah, that's it's interesting stuff. By the way,